Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Christian. And thanks for all your efforts, for your long year efforts in organizing these events, which I find very, very interesting. So great to be here. And I will now start presenting the results from the European Biochar Market Report. And that should be here, right. So we've been conducting this report now for the third time. We started that because we felt like it's very, very important to get good market data, and these good market data were lacking. So we took the initiative and started that activity. Before I go into that, I'll gonna share a couple of thoughts on biochar carbon removal, and starting with a kind of new term, biochar carbon removal, which we introduced after a quite extensive stakeholder process where we asked many people on feedback how we should frame it. And many people previously used PUCs, but that was never really adopted in the large reports. They always talked about biochar, but talking about biochar doesn't really make sense because it's the material. So we, in that process, we defined therefore the term biochar carbon removal, or just short BCR, and we got very good feedback on this term. So this is what it is. We're capturing, we let plants capture the carbon, transform it to biochar in pyrolysis. In most cases, the biochar is tailored to its application and then goes to the carbon preserving application, agriculture, city trees, or construction. And then in the report, I also took a high level look on what are we doing here. So we're having biomass, and if we have a process that is optimized to get as much biochar yield as possible, we get about 50% of the carbon will be turned into biochar and 50% into energy. And I'm saying that because this year's report for the first time also looks at something that is around for a while, but was not that much considered. I mean, generally speaking, if you have biochar, you can do three things. One is you burn it, which would be the same as just burning it right away, the wood. So this is obviously not what we really want. But the second thing that you could do is you use the biochar as a material into metallurgic processes. And that is quite becoming more and more relevant. And therefore, I took up this topic. And the third way of dealing with biochar or using the biochar would be the carbon preserving applications. And if you look at these cases, in this year's report, we found that quite a number of the biochar producers in Europe, they look at this market of the metallurgic industry. It's not carbon removal, obviously, but if you have a metallurgic process that needs carbon to reduce oxygen that is in the process, for example, in the silicon industry, then this is really relevant and important for emission reduction, because these processes need carbon, and it's either fossil or biogenic. And when I talk later about the volumes, I have included plants that have dedicated percentage of production to this industry, but I have not accounted them in. I mean, that means that, for example, there's a plant that produces maybe 10% of its production for the for carbon preserving application and 90% for the metallurgic industry. Then for the numbers you will see later, I only accounted for the carbon preserving applications. Then just a quick note on the various CDR options, and that we are wholeheartedly convinced that there are a lot of synergies between the different technologies. And I just want to mention that the synergy between biochar carbon removal and BECCS is very obvious, because when you do biochar production, you can, of course, also withdraw the CO2 from the exhaust gas and take the CO2 out and store it underground. But now, where is biochar and where is its exact place? I mean, we need a lot of different technologies, and they all have different growth trajectories, and only the portfolio approach can deliver. And the place for biochar is now, because it's very much mature. And I want to show this during this presentation and for the report. And so first of all, starting with the biomass, what is really important that there is a broad range of biomass that is used for carbonization. I guess the people that are here in the webinar, they know well about this, so I can go very quickly through that. But this is very often forgotten. It can be from wood, from woody biomass over to sewage sludge and also maritime biomass. There's just a broad variety. And the other broad variety or range is on applications. And you probably all know that in Europe, we have kind of in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, today most of the usage is in agriculture, while in Scandinavia, specifically Sweden, it's the urban applications. And we as EBI, we think that the construction usage will be very much a future thing that will be coming in large quantities. So quick word on EBI. So today we're 82 or 83 members, quickly grew from kind of doubled every year over the last years. And we're really proud to say that we feel like that really most of the commercial players in biochar in Europe are now part of EBI. And we see that when we talk to the European Commission, that this has a strong weight in our talk. So we're kind of perceived, and we are, I guess, the voice of biochar in Europe. Quick note on where our members are come from. There are three large groups that are the equipment manufacturers, but then also plant operators and people that are planning to do an operation, and then there's service companies. And we're active in 4 fields of activities, talking today only about the market intelligence, the subject of the market report. Now, to the market report directly, just one word on who did the report. That report was gathered with a lot of information from many people and mostly from the equipment manufacturers and plant operators, which openly shared their data with me. We're not sharing the raw data because they include partially confidential information from the suppliers, but they allow us to publish the data in a consolidated way. And my thanks goes always to these people who support that report. And on the that was wrong direction. Yeah. And the other thank goes to Carbon Future and South Pole, who this year sponsored that report to make whole of the cost we had on our site. Then one word on motivation. We believe that high quality market data is key to take decisions, and not only business decisions, but also political decisions. And we found it difficult to find good valuable market data. And therefore we collect it and share it with a broader group, which we can do not only to our members, but to the larger group. Now let me talk about biochar manufacturing equipment. And there was something going on which was kind of not surprising, but really impressive to us. So there are quite some established equipment manufacturers, which you in the webinar most know the companies here. There are kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 companies that are really, really mature. And some of them have deployed more than 30 equipments. And so we're really talking about a technology that in the definition of the European Commission, in the NASA definition of technology readiness levels are clearly at a level of 9. And there's a huge variety of different equipment manufacturers, different sizes, different types of biochar, sewage sludge. The technological basis really broadened a lot in the last, I would say, 2 years. But while a while ago, many of these companies had just prototypes, now they have first, second, third equipment of its type. So there was a very strong technological development. Now to the key results of the report. And I'll start with the number of biochar production plants installed in Europe. So we counted that in 2022, it was close to 30 plants that were installed. And it was a bit less than we had expected because some of the projects had slipped due to COVID and other reasons. But we are now very confident that this number will grow by 50 installations during the course of this year. So in total installations, and be aware that we are only counting for installations that are larger than 200 tons annual production. So we were at 130 installations end of last year. And that number will likely grow to 180 by end of the year. So pretty impressive growth. And we see a lot of large projects that are in the permitting and planning process for commissioning in 2024. So huge dynamics now coming from number of plants, installations to the volume, the production capacity, and showing at the same time the growth rate. So to the left axis, you see the 10,000 tons of biochar produced, being the gray bars. And on the right axis, you can see the growth rate. Because whenever you handle or deal with exponential growth, it is totally difficult to see how fast is the growth. So it's worth really looking at the annual growth rate. And if what we expect from the plants that we have in our databases, we expect that the 3 years growth rate, the 3 years growth rate was 56% in average, and that will grow to about 60+% till the end of the year. And so we expect something like 90,000 tons production this year. And that is an estimate production capacity, and a growth rate of 80%. Now, okay, it goes on. Now coming to the biochar production, and what you see here are estimates on how to calculate from production capacity to production. And that has two reasons why it's not the same. The first one is that a plant that is installed in 2023 will obviously not be all installed in January 2023. And the second reason why we're not producing 90,000 tons this year is that in the first year, you wouldn't have the highest uptime. So we assumed a 60% uptimes for 6 months for the current year, and 80% uptimes for everything that was installed till end of last year. And with that, we come to a total production capacity, a total production of biochar. We estimate that to have been 33,000 last year. And we expect that to grow to 50,000 tons roughly this year. And that means 50,000 tons, more than 50,000 tons is roughly 150,000 tons. And with that, this is the most relevant negative emission technology in Europe. Let's look at the production plants that have been installed. We clustered them into sizes, and you see the distribution here The largest group is the group large, between 500 and 2,000 tons of biochar. That's where most of the biochar is being, it's the largest group. Then with regards to the countries or regions, we have three strong regions. One is Germany, with almost 1/3 of the installed production capacity end of 2022. And then we have Austria, Switzerland, which is also pretty strong with close to 20%. And a quarter is Nordic countries, mostly driven by Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And then there's a lot of potential for rest of Europe to come to the place and produce as well. Then there was quite some movement on the certification side, both on the product, but also on the carbon removal. So with EBC clearly being the most relevant certificate, both on the C-Sync value, but also on the material. And you will find more on this in the report. So coming to the summary, the technology is mature. We have at least 10 very experienced EU providers for at least a TRL 9, and much more companies to come. The market is growing strongly and is continuing to grow. We have production capacity of had production capacity of 50,000 end of last year, will be growing to 90,000 end of this year. And we believe it's relatively easy to scale to large volumes. And with that, biochar is the most relevant carbon removal technology. Now, and I will just show you as an example what we also did in the report. By the way, the report is downloadable on the EBI site. I will put later on into the chat the link where you can download the full market report. And in that market report, we have also highlighted a couple of reference projects which show which kind of installations have been done. But now I would like to jump to the scaling element and the political side, where how we think that this industry could further evolve. Well, biochar plays an important role in the CDR volume, and that is shown by this slide here. So you remember the slide print or the graph principle. Left side, this time not anymore tonnage of biochar, but converted to tonnage of CO2 equivalent. And so the dark blue, well, this is real numbers until 2022. And on the right side, on the right axis, we have the growth rate. And what this graph basically says, if we continue to grow at 70%, which we believe is very, very possible, we will be able to meet or overachieve the target of the European Commission with regards to industrial CDR. And this will be relative, I mean, in terms of equipment manufacturing, this will not be terribly challenging. Just as a reference, to achieve that, we would need just over 3,000 plants to be installed until end of 2030. As a reference, in Europe, there are 143,000 medium-sized combustion plants. So is it possible to install 3,000 biochar plants? I think so. And then extrapolating that now to beyond 2030, there will be a point in time where the growth rates will have to be reduced, because otherwise the biomass would not be, biomass would become a bottleneck. But in this exemplary growth path, biomass would not be a real bottleneck, and I'll show you later. Short term, it is the challenge to kickstart the market, both in terms of installations, but also in terms of usage of biochar. And midterm, long term, it will be the biomass, the key topic, and mainly with and we're always preaching smart allocation of biomass and cascaded use. And with regards to biomass availability, this is a study that was done by Imperial London College on the biomass availability for 2030. And just to give you an idea where we are in, or what percentage of that biomass, that available biomass would be needed to comply with these 2030, 2040 scenarios, we would need 1% of biomass to achieve the 6 megatons by 2030, and 19% of the biomass to achieve the 100 megatons by 2040. And since, I mean, it's a bit misleading, the 19%, because smart use of biomass means that thermal energy will be needed. So if you would burn, these plants can also provide heat, and therefore it's not fully in competition with the thermal use of biochar. So that was everything. And I'll conclude with our statement that we are very much convinced that biochar carbon removal is capable of delivering carbon removal at climate relevant volumes within 15 years. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Hansjörg, for this update on the biochar, on the European biochar market. I now open the floor to any questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand or write them into the chat. So we had one comment from Trevor before. So he was asking if it's a good idea to include biochar or carbon materials that are used in metallurgical industry under the same term. So I'm sure you already thought about this.
Look, we thought about that, of course. And once again, I want to stress the fact that the numbers that you saw in terms of production volume and CO2 emission obviously do not include any tonnage of biochar, of char, let's call it carbon, that is used in the metallurgic industry. And the reason why we're doing that, there are now a couple of manufacturers that in one factory, it's just, as a matter of fact, they produce the same material. And maybe sometimes it could even happen that they produce the material, and when the material falls into the big bag, the producer does not yet even know where his salesperson sells the big bag to, whether that big bag goes left to the carbon, to the metallurgic industry, or right to the to a soil application. And therefore I do agree with you, but it's kind of difficult.
And do you see as a follow-up from myself, do you see a competition issue if the metallurgical industry will pick this up on a large scale? Because I mean they take more biomass than
yeah, I do see a potential conflict of competition, but with regards to the climate, I don't think that this is a problem, because I mean it might, climate-wise, it might be even more relevant to replace fossil carbon in the silicon solar industry, because I mean we need a lot of solar. And we don't want people to, I mean, we want people to be creative on how that can be solved with another reactant, like hydrogen, and that there are processes where you can work with hydrogen, but there are also metallurgic processes where you can't work, or where it would be very difficult to work with hydrogen. So yes, I do think that there is some point of competition.
So there was another question from Jenny. Do you exclude the UK by now?
Of course not. Why should I? You're in our heart.
So that's good, because I'm right now in the UK.
I know.
So John Hoffmeyer was asking, do you have a response to the En-ROADS model that indicates biochar has low relevance in controlling global warming? I'm personally not familiar with that model.
Me neither, but I'm in a way, I'm not that. I mean, there are many people out there writing things, and I mean, it's just a matter of fact that we are really. I mean, today we are not climate relevant, of course, not with 150,000 tons of CO2. That is ridiculous. But I think we are now really at a point where we can show and credibly explain how we can grow to climate relevance in 15 years. And look, I'm really convinced that, I mean, the more other CDR technologies make it to market relevance and climate relevance, the better it is. So I'm not feeling any competition feeling with direct air capture or with BACs. So yes, it's great, but to be honest, people that are writing about biochar not being relevant, they might have a 1 hour session with me, and I guess they would look at it differently.
And they can have a look at this webinar as well.
Sure.
So there were, now we cannot go through all the questions, but there was one or two mentionings of the pricing mechanism in the market. So did you have a look in the report in how is the pricing, where is it going? Do people now get offtake agreements on their already planned plans before they produce, or any comments?
No, we have deliberately not addressed that. Number one, it's very volatile because you can imagine, I mean, that production capacity that I just presented, that will be coming, full stop. And obviously then the market is very dynamic, let's say. And the range of biochar pricing is pretty broad. And it depends on quality, so that would entail a lot of confidential information that then commercial producers are not willing to share. And by the way, the same is true on carbon credits, whereas the carbon credit value kind of seems to consolidate in the range between 120 and 150 euros currently. That's what I say that is credible, reasonable. Of course, you find deals where people are saying that they sell their credits for 250. Well, maybe yes, but not at the biggest volumes.
Yeah, so that was also, there was you already mentioned now the certificate market. So what's your personal opinion? How big of an impact will this have on the biochar market development?
Very huge, very significant, very relevant. I mean, already today with 130, 120 euros per ton, that is a relevant element to the revenue stream of the biochar for a biochar producer. That goes into carbon preserving applications, obviously. But let me really stress here the fact that building up trustworthy systems is very, very important to my point of view. So, and that entails for me three things. That is MRV system, a digital MRV system that is easy to handle and that is credible and that can really kind of, well, avoid double counting. The second element for me is a closed line of contracts, because it's not only that you have to track it, you also have to have a contractual liability of people to deal with the biochar the way they say they would deal it. And that needs to be a contractual obligation. So if somebody says, I'm gonna put that biochar into soil and then claims for a carbon credit, and he would then sell the biochar to the metallurgic industry, you would have to be able to go after him and ask him for damage. And number three is independent, I really mean independent, third-party validation and certification. These are the three things that are needed, and with that, a trustworthy system can be built up.